The story of Ben Simmons is one of the most debated in modern basketball. When he first entered the league, he was seen as the next face of the NBA, a 6'10 guard with elite vision, defense, and athleticism. He looked like a once-in-a-generation type of player, but somewhere along the way, everything shifted. What was supposed to be a superstar rise turned into a constant cycle of pressure, criticism, and doubt. And a big part of that story is how fame changed everything around him before his game could fully evolve. When Simmons first came into the league, he already had attention that most rookies never got. He was the number 1 overall pick. That alone puts a spotlight on you. But on top of that, he had been compared to LeBron James since high school. That comparison followed him everywhere. Before he even played a real NBA game, people were already expecting greatness. That kind of expectation is not normal. It's pressure that can shape how every mistake is judged. From the moment he stepped onto the court, everything he did was analyzed. His passes were highlighted, his defense was praised, and his size at the point guard position was seen as revolutionary. But the moment he showed weaknesses, they were amplified just as fast. His lack of shooting became the main storyline. Even when he was winning games or putting up strong all-around numbers, the conversation would always circle back to the same thing. He doesn't shoot enough. That's where fame starts to play a different role. In the NBA, talent alone isn't the full story anymore. Social media, highlight culture, and constant debate shows turned players into daily topics. For Simmons, that meant every game became a judgment session. One bad performance wasn't just a bad night, it became a viral discussion. Every missed free throw or hesitated shot turned into clips that spread everywhere. Early on, he still had success. He won Rookie of the Year. He made All-Star teams. He helped the Philadelphia 76ers become one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. But even during success, the narrative never really changed. The fame he had gained made him a target for constant criticism. People weren't just evaluating his game. They were building expectations that he had to become something he wasn't yet comfortable being. The turning point came during the playoffs, where pressure is always at its highest. In crucial moments, especially in half-court offense situations, Simmons became hesitant to shoot. Defense started exploiting that. The media amplified it, and suddenly, instead of being seen as a rising superstar, he was being questioned as a liability in key moments. Once that narrative takes hold in modern NBA, it spreads fast. Fame doesn't just bring attention, it locks in perceptions. And for Simmons, the perception started shifting from future MVP candidate to a player with a major flaw that can't be ignored. After that, every playoff moment added more weight. The criticism grew louder. Analysts broke down his game possession by possession. Fans debated him non-stop, and online culture made sure that every mistake lived forever in highlight form. That kind of environment can affect confidence in a real way, especially for a player whose game relies heavily on aggression, decision-making, and control. Over time, Simmons' confidence at key offensive moments seemed to shrink. He still defended at an elite level, he still passed at a high level as well, but offensively, especially in situations where he needed to assert himself, hesitation became more noticeable. And in professional sports, hesitation can change everything. The famous playoff moment where he passed up an open layup is often brought up as the defining image of his career shift. Whether fair or unfair, the moment became symbolic. It wasn't just about one play. It became the story people used to define him. And fame is powerful like that. one clip can reshape an entire reputation. After that playoff run, everything escalated. The media pressured, and Philadelphia is already intense. And Simmons became the center of constant discussion. Interviews, trade rumors, and criticism from former players all added more weight. Instead of being allowed to develop at his own pace, he was now in survival mode. Eventually, the relationship between him and the team broke down. He stopped playing for the 76ers. The situation became one of the most talked about storylines in the league. And again, fame played a major role here, not just in the criticism, but in how quickly everything spreaded and escalated. In previous eras, these situations might have stayed eternal longer. But in the modern NBA, everything becomes public instantly. During his time away from the court, conversation around him didn't slow down. If anything, it got louder. People questioned his motivation, his mindset, and his future in the league. Every update was analyzed like breaking news. Fame doesn't pause just because a player steps away. It continues to build narratives without them. When Simmons was eventually traded to the Brooklyn Nets, expectations shifted again. Now the narrative was about redemption, a fresh start, a new environment, a chance to prove people wrong. But by that point, the pressure had multiplied. He wasn't just a young star anymore. He was one of the most heavily debated players in the league. In Brooklyn, injuries became another major factor. Back issues kept him out for long stretches, and once again, the combination of absence and fame created speculation. When a player with that much attention is not on the court, every detail becomes a story. Every setback becomes amplified. At this stage, Simmons' career wasn't just about basketball performance anymore. It was about identity in the public eye. Some people still saw him as a defensive star and elite passer. Others saw him as a player who never fully reached his potential. And that split perception is one of the clearest signs of how fame can shape a career narrative. The truth is, Simmons never lacked talent. Very few players in the NBA history have had his combination of size, passing ability, and defensive versatility. But fame doesn't just reward talent, it demands constant evolution under pressure. And for some players, that pressure becomes part of the challenge itself. In Simmons' case, the spotlight arrived faster than his offense development could keep up. And once criticism became the dominant storyline, every part of his game was filtered through that lens. Even good performances were sometimes overlooked because people were focused on what he wasn't doing. That's one of the harsh realities of fame in sports. It doesn't just highlight success, it can also freeze a player in a specific narrative. For Simmons, that narrative became about missed opportunities, hesitations, and what ifs. Even now, his career is still talked about in terms of potential rather than completion. People ask what went wrong more than what went right. And that alone shows how powerful the public perception can be in shaping legacy. But it's also important to understand that fame didn't destroy his career in a simple way. It created pressure, and that pressure influenced how every moment was judged. Once the criticism became loud enough, it affected confidence, decisions, and opportunities. It became a cycle that fed itself. Simmons is still a unique case because he reached a level of success many players never do. All-star appearances, playoff runs, defensive recognition. But the expectations placed on him were not normal expectations. They were superstar expectations from the very beginning. And that gap between expectation and reality is where fame becomes dangerous. And in the end, the story of Ben Simmons is not just about missed shots or playoff moments. It's about how quickly a young player can go from being praised as the future of the league to becoming one of the most debated figures. It's about how every action becomes public property in the age of social media. And it's about how difficult it is to develop under a spotlight that never turns off. Whether he still rebuilds his career or not, his story will always be used as an example of how fast things can change when fame meets expectation. At the end of the day, the Ben Simmons story isn't just about missed shots, injuries, or trade drama. It's about what happens when expectations move faster than development in a league that never stops watching. Fame didn't create his talent, and it didn't erase it either. What it did was turn every weakness into a headline and every mistake into a moment people remember more than the success. Simmons still had a career most players would dream of. Number 1 overall pick, all-star selections, deep playoff runs, and defensive dominance at the highest level. But in the modern NBA, that's not always what defines you. Sometimes it's the moments you didn't take the shot that end up defining the entire narrative. Whether he writes a comeback chapter or stays a what could have been story, his legacy is already locked in as one of the most clearest examples of how brutal the spotlight can be when fame arrives before everything is ready. Let me know what other NBA players you guys want to hear me talk about next, and I'll see you guys in the next video.